We are the foundation, bulletproof the hating. From the plantation, we built the whole nation. We are the foundation, bulletproof the hating. From the plantation, we built the whole nation. We are the foundation, bulletproof the hating. From the plantation, we built the whole nation. We are the foundation, bulletproof the hating. From the plantation, we built the whole nation.
Greetings, FBA Universe. On today's episode of Stop Lying, we present facts and evidence to debunk the myth that some people have about the Irish being slaves in America. Trying to latch on to reparations. Trying to portray the image that the Irish were persecuted as bad as the foundational black Americans in America, which is a total lie, and I'm about to prove it. First, let's take a look at this 2019 meme by some idiot named Michael John Melton. As you can see, we have some beautiful redhead children. You know, I'm FBA all day, but we love all the kids. You know, FBA won't mess with kids. But the adults, that's a different situation. As you can see, we have some beautiful redheaded children. And an idiotic statement that says, the Irish were slaves too. Do they deserve reparations? That's all fine and dandy, but there's one little small problem. First of all, this picture was taken in Holland. And those little cute redheaded children, they're not even Irish. They're Dutch! Do you see how these deceivers do, FBA Universe? Number one, let's take a look at these slave ship manifests, aka the slave records. Contrary to popular opinion, especially the idiotic opinion of some of these Pan-Africanists, the transatlantic slave trade was an organized business. The Europeans did not run up on the interior of Africa snatching up random black people. That's not how it happened, sorry. We weren't stolen from Africa. We were rounded up, then purchased by the Europeans at the slave ports. The Europeans then rounded us up. The Arabs and the native West Africans rounded us up. It was an organized, structured business. And when you have an organized, structured business, what do? Those of us who worked in a warehouse before know how that goes. I worked in a warehouse before. Don't you take notes and keep track of your inventory? Correct me if I'm wrong. I worked years in a warehouse before. You keep track of the inventory. The slaves were the inventory. Now, as you can see, you can look up plenty slave manifests that speak about the Negroid slaves that they took upon the slave ships. Can anybody listening who thinks the Irish were slaves show me one slave manifest during the era of the transatlantic slave trade that shows the Irish being put on slave ships as slaves? I'll wait. Crickets! Number two, original names and culture. As we all know, the American slave owners slapped their names on their slaves, their last names. That's why you have foundational black Americans with the names like John Jackson, Michael Jones, Albert Johnson, things like that. European names. We all know the slaves from Africa weren't allowed to keep their original names. We all have European names. All FBA have European last names. Now, can somebody explain to me, if the Irish were slaves, how come the slave masters didn't change the last names of these Irish slaves? All Irish people still have their original family Irish names. Am I lying? So you telling me the slave owners only changed the names of the black slaves, but let the Irish slaves keep their original Irish names? Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know what y'all thinking. Don't make sense, does it? But we're getting down to the nitty gritty, ain't we? Let's talk about culture. Now, we all know the majority of slave owners in the South were what we known as Southern Christian or Baptist. And the majority of slaves, the black slaves, got their religions converted to Southern Baptist or Christian, which is what most of foundational black Americans are today. They're either Christian or Southern Baptist. That's a fact. The majority of the Irish Americans in America are either Protestant or Catholic, which is different from the Southern Christianity that foundational black Americans and the white slave owners of the South practice. Now, you mean to tell me the slave owners in the South only changed the religion of the black slaves to Christianity, but let the Irish keep the original religion that they came over from Europe with? That doesn't make sense. Like I said, we're getting down to the nitty gritty, and this is Channel Raw TV, and we come with receipts and recipes. The receipts is the evidence, and the recipes is what I cook up to make these liars shut up. Number 3, loss of identity. Now, we all know that the foundational black Americans, the black slaves of the South, totally lost all of their identity. Everything. Language, culture, religion, everything. Lost everything. Now, if the Irish were slaves, how is it that the Irish still know the Irish Americans still know that they're Irish? The average Irish person in America can tell you the exact town in Ireland where their forefathers came from. The average black American don't know where the hell they came from. We're the only group that got to take all types of DNA tests and look up birth records from 400 years ago to have even a little inkling to find out where we came from. Now explain to me, if the Irish were slaves, how come they never lost their identity? Riddle me that. For all the people who think the Irish were slaves, they never lost their identity. The black slaves, they totally lost their identity. That's a fact. Number 4, let's go to genetics. Now, we all know that the Irish are some of the most undermelanated, pasty white people on the earth. Some of the whitest people on the earth next to the Swiss. Now, we all know the slaves in America, especially on the southern plantations, worked 7 days a week in a hot-ass southern sun, sun to sundown, for over 240 years. Now, we all know somebody who didn't have enough melanin in their skin would not be able to do that. So what type of slavery are we talking about? The Irish wouldn't have been able to be slaves in the South, working 7 days a week, sun up to sundown in that hot-ass southern plantation sun. That is a fact. Fact. Tell me I'm lying. Quick history notes. Like impoverished people of other nationalities and ethnicities, many people immigrated from Ireland to the Americas in the 17th and 18th centuries as indentured servants. A smaller number were forcibly banished into indentured servitude during the period of the English Civil Wars. Indentured servants often lived and worked under harsh conditions and were sometimes treated cruelly. I know, I hear the haters. See, read that last line again. They lived under harsh conditions and were treated cruelly. That's what happened to slaves. I told you they were slaves. Oh yeah, you think so? Shall I continue? Unlike institutionalized chattel slavery, which is what the blacks went through, indentured servitude was neither hereditary nor lifelong. Unlike black slaves, white, aka Irish, indentured servants had legal rights. Unlike black slaves, indentured servants weren't considered property. FBA Universe, y'all know what's coming next, right? Wait for it. Mic drop! Indentured servitude versus chattel slavery. Limerick-based research librarian and historian Liam Hogan takes aim at this notion in a series of papers debunking what he calls the Irish slaves myth. There were no Irish slaves in the Americas, Hogan says. People who claim there were are conflating indentured servitude with chattel slavery. Two distinct forms of servitude with more differences between them than similarities. Hit it, boys! Mic drop! Now, this is an Irish guy saying this. Channel 1 TV, how do you know he's Irish? First of all, idiot, his last name is Hogan. That's an Irish name. But Channel 1 TV, you just said there's black people with Irish last name. Idiot! He's in Limerick. That's a town in Ireland. There's black people in Ireland too. The idiocy. Hit him with the picture, boys. Bow! Look at it. Receipts and recipes. Don't act like you don't know this is Channel 1 TV. We don't speak on personal opinion here. It's all receipts and recipes. Now I want everybody to look at the screen right now. Here's some original slave auction posters of them selling Negroid slaves in the United States. Now, can anybody show me one, just one, slave auction poster of the Irish being sold as slaves? I'll wait. Crickets! And last but not least, number 5, stories passed down through family. Now, as a foundational black American, most of us have stories passed down through the generations about how great-great-great-great-grandmother got raped in some slave plantation somewhere down south by the white slave master. Some foundational black Americans can pinpoint the exact slave plantation that their forefathers were slaves on in the South. Whether it be Louisiana, North Carolina, where my mama from, Georgia, where my daddy from, we all have slave confirmation stories passed down generation to generation. Our families have a recollection of being slaves. That's for you, Dan Calloway apologists. Now, walk up to the average Irish American in the United States and ask them, does their family have any recollection or stories passed down about them being slaves in the United States? They will look at you like you are crazy, because it never happened. They were never slaves. They were indentured servants. That's why their Irish last names are still intact. They still eat their native Irish cuisine. They still practice their original European religions. Their culture is intact. So all you liars who want to perpetrate this fraud that the Irish were slaves in America, on behalf of all foundational black Americans and Channel Raw TV, stop